Chapter 11 of Abbotsford and Newstead Abbey by Washington Irving. This Librivox Recording is in the public domain. Recording by Greg Giordano. Newstead Abbey, Plough, Monday. Sherwood Forest is a region that still retains much of the quaint customs and holiday games of the olden time. A day or two after my arrival at the Abbey, as I was walking in the cloisters, I heard the sound of rustic music, and now and then a burst of merriment, proceeding from the interior of the mansion. Presently the chamberlain came and informed me that a party of country lads were in the servants' hall, performing Plough Monday antics, and invited me to witness their mummery. I gladly assented, for I am somewhat curious about these relics of popular usages. The servants' hall was a fit place for the exhibition of an old Gothic game. It was a chamber of great extent, which in monkish times had been the refectory of the abbey. A row of massive columns extended lengthwise through the centre, whence sprung Gothic arches, supporting the low vaulted ceiling. Here was a set of rustics dressed up in something of the style represented in the books concerning popular antiquities. One was in a rough garb of frieze, with his head muffled in bearskin, and a bell dangling behind him, that jingled at every movement. He was the clown or fool of the party, probably a traditional representative of the ancient satyr. The rest were decorated with ribbons and armed with wooden swords. The leader of the troop recited the old ballad of St. George and the Dragon, which had been current among the country people for ages. His companions accompanied the recitation with some rude attempt at acting, while the clown cut all kinds of antics. To these succeeded a set of Morris dancers, gaily dressed up with ribbons and hawks' bells. In this troop we had Robin Hood and Maid Marian, the latter represented by a smooth-faced boy. Also Beelzebub, equipped with a broom, and accompanied by his wife Bessy, a termagant old beldame. These rude pageants are the lingering remains of the old customs of Plough Monday, when bands of rustics, fantastically dressed and furnished with pipe and tabor, dragged what was called the fool plough from house to house, singing ballads and performing antics, for which they were rewarded with money and good cheer. But it is not in merry Sherwood Forest alone that these remnants of old times prevail. They are to be met with in most of the counties north of the Trent, which classic stream seems to be the boundary line of primitive customs. During my recent Christmas sojourn at Barborough Hall, on the skirts of Derbyshire and Yorkshire, I had witnessed many of the rustic festivities peculiar to that joyous season, which have rashly been pronounced obsolete by those who draw their experience merely from city life. I had seen the great Yule log put on the fire on Christmas Eve, and the wassail bowl sent round, brimming with its spicy beverage. I had heard carols beneath my windows by the choristers of the neighbouring village, who went their rounds about the ancient hall at midnight, according to immemorial custom. We had mummers and mimers too, with the story of St. George and the Dragon, and other ballads and traditional dialogues, together with the famous old interlude of the hobby horse, all represented in the antechamber and servants' hall by rustics, who inherited the custom and the poetry from preceding generations. The boar's head, crowned with rosemary, had taken its honoured station among the Christmas cheer. The festal board had been attended by glee singers and minstrels from the village to entertain the company with hereditary songs and catches during the repast. And the old Pyrrhic game of the sword dance, handed down since the time of the Romans, was admirably performed at the courtyard of the mansion by a band of young men, lithe and supple in their forms and graceful in their movements, who, I was told, went the rounds of the villages and country seats during the Christmas holidays. I specify these rural pageants and ceremonials, which I saw during my sojourn in this neighbourhood, because it had been deemed that some of the anecdotes of holiday customs given in my preceding writings related to usages which have entirely passed away. Critics who reside in cities have little idea of the primitive manners and observances which still prevail in remote and rural neighborhoods. In fact, in crossing the Trent, one seems to step back into old times, and in the villages of Sherwood Forest we are in a black-letter region. The moss-green cottages, the lowly mansions of grey stone, the Gothic crosses at each end of the villages, and the tall maypole in the centre, transport us in imagination to foregone centuries. Everything has a quaint and antiquated air. The tenantry on the Abbey estate partake of this primitive character. Some of the families have rented farms there for nearly 300 years, and notwithstanding that their mansions fell to decay, and everything about them partook of the general waste and misrule of the Byron dynasty, yet nothing could uproot them from their native soil. I am happy to say that Colonel Wildman has taken these stanch loyal families under his peculiar care. He has favored them in their rents, repaired, or rather rebuilt their farmhouses, and has enabled families that had almost sunk into the class of mere rustic laborers, once more to hold up their heads among the yeomanry of the land. I visited one of these renovated establishments that had but lately been a mere ruin, and now was a substantial grange. It was inhabited by a young couple. The good woman showed every part of the establishment with decent pride, exulting in its comfort and respectability. Her husband, I understood, had risen in consequence with the improvement of his mansion, and now began to be known among his rustic neighbours by the appellation of the young squire. End of chapter 11. Recording by Greg Giordano, Newport Richey, Florida.